I think for
Mhm.
many couples, sometimes those first steps just feel so challenging. But like I said, brokenness, pain affords you some risk, some
Mhm.
opportunity. And that's definitely what happened to us that season when we had nothing else going for us, didn't know if we were going to make it in our marriage or family. It gave us the push, that we needed to
Yeah.
start dreaming together again.
Welcome to the Intertwined Life podcast. I am your host, Jenny Zentz. I am a wife and a mom on a mission. I've got a passion to help women discover practical ways to apply the power of God's Word to our everyday stuff. I truly believe that our walks with the Lord should be seamlessly intertwined with our everyday lives. It should affect every move we make and every breath we take. So come on, let's do life together. You've got this, because He's got you. Hey guys, I'm excited to bring you the first part of this two-part interview with Josh and Katie Walters. They're here today discussing their latest book, New Marriage, Same Couple, Don't Let Your Worst Days Be Your Last. So good. Today we're talking about finding hope for your marriage, regardless of the state of your marriage right now, where your marriage is, how far you feel like you have spiraled out of control. Josh and Katie are bringing some hope and some practical advice and encouragement to you through this episode. And then I'm doing a new thing. I'm splitting some things up to get us some smaller episodes because I know that it can really be hard, especially in summer and just in general in lives, to listen to hour plus long episodes. So I'm going to start breaking them down a little bit. So this is going to be part one. And then do not forget to come back in 2 weeks where you can catch part two, where we're talking about what if you're the only one? What if in your marriage, you are the only one ready to fight for it? You're the only one who sees anything worth holding on to. Whether your spouse is a believer or not, you can find yourself in a situation where you feel all alone in your party of two. And how do you get them on board? How do you even begin to fight the good fight for a marriage that the other person is totally checked out of? So don't forget to come back in 2 weeks for that. But I know you are going to really enjoy getting to know Josh and Katie, their story, and being encouraged for finding hope in your marriage. All right. Josh and Katie Walters, welcome to the Intertwined Life podcast.
Thank you for having us. We're so glad to be here.
I am really excited to talk to you guys. We've been planning off and on for a long time. We're just saying it's life. It's real life, right?
It's real life.
Oh my gosh. I
True.
felt one time that I felt the Lord tell me, don't use life as an excuse for not living. And
So good.
right? Because how many times do we do that? It's like, well, when the kids are this age and when the marriage is in a better place as we're going, or when. And it never really happens. We never get caught up. We never get all this stuff done. There's never this like season that we're looking forward to being like, oh, yeah. It's never. There's always more stuff, right? So here we are. We made it. And we're here and we're
That's
talking.
so good.
I'm
It's
really
funny.
excited.
We actually just said that this morning. We were saying that for a lot of married couples, your life doesn't look anything like you dreamed about when you were dating or when you were,
Mhm.
because life happens.
Yes.
The child gets sick, the parent gets sick, the move doesn't happen, the job doesn't happen. And so I do think people stop dreaming. You stopped living, just exactly like what you're saying. So
Mhm.
we really resonate with that.
Oh, it's so good. I'm really excited because as we talk with you guys, I'm going to be going through a season on the podcast just about relationships in general. This spring is our anniversary in April. So it's kind of fun to be doing like, oh, the whole personal relationship. First of the year was discipleship and growing our walk with Christ. And then obviously that overflows to our relationships. And I know you guys are going to be talking about that. You have recently written a book. What's the name of that book? You guys say it for me because you'll say the title better than I will.
Yes, it's called New Marriage, Same Couple. Don't let your worst days be your last days.
Mm. Mm. Yes. And Tim and I sometimes will say that our worst days were our first days,
Yes, a
right?
lot of couples say
I
that.
think
It's
they're
so true.
surprising. I think that we should have postmarital counseling instead of premarital counseling because you can't tell those people anything. And then when it's not
Mm,
what you thought it was going to be, it's like, whoa, 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 what's going on? Well,
sure.
I want to hear about this because you guys, Josh and Katie, are spreading hope and leaving people feeling stoked. I love that line. I got that. I don't know if I got that from your website or from your publisher. It was like spreading hope and leaving people feeling stoked about what God has in store for their marriage.
I don't think we've ever even said that. So
Uh,
that is so funny.
isn't that
It
awesome?
must, yes,
I
that's so
pulled it
funny.
from somewhere. You guys are rock stars. But
That's
I love it.
awesome.
I love it. So you're here to breathe new life maybe into some spaces and some homes and some relationships where people are just starting to feel like, is there still life in this?
Mm,
And obviously, you guys have a story or you wouldn't have a book, right? There's
Right.
always a
That's
story
right.
behind the ministry and behind what God's doing and how he uses us. So I want to hear about this, all things marriage. You guys just dive in. But first, tell me about your life, your family, your ministry. Like what brought you to this area and this place in your life?
Yeah. You
yeah, so we have been married 22 years
mhm.
and have 7 kids. That
Woo!
is, had always been kind of
Mhm.
the dream. We both grew up with a best friend that was a part of a large family. We both had one sibling. Katie has a half sister as well, and just always dreamed of having a large family. So that came about. Took a while. We've got kids ranging from 20 to 3. And
Wow.
so we will be in the thick of the parenting world with kids in the house till we're 59, which is fun. But
Wow.
always dreamed of moving to Charleston. We've been here about 15 years now, and it wasn't until that rough season of marriage that, when the things that are seem kind of like settled and firm in your life suddenly become like fragile and questionable, you're willing to make harder moves, right? So we
Mhm.
moved
Yeah.
here really in kind of that desperation season of we needed a new zip code, a new start, and a move was just part of that. So since getting here, thought I was a youth pastor, thought I was stepping away from ministry just for our marriage, and God had some plans at the church we landed at, Seacoast Church, that was we were able to come to really at a just busted place, and it was a church that was a place that we were able to be broken when we needed the church. That ultimately we both ended up coming on staff and working at. So it's just really sweet to attend and worship at a church when we were hurting and needing, and to then be on staff there. And it's like, man, we don't have to be all tidy and neat because y'all knew who
Yes.
we were, And
Mhm.
Yes.
so,
That's right. No
Yes.
pretenses.
you know,
And the move really was interesting, I think, for any couple listening, because when we were dreaming together, about having 7 kids, we always said we want to live overseas and be missionaries and have llamas. We had all these dreams and we
Yes.
were going to
Love it.
live all over the world. And then
Yeah.
we ended up taking a job right out of college. Josh did at a church, and we didn't leave that town that we were in college in Columbia, South Carolina for 7 years.
Mm.
It felt like impossible to dream to move. I think for
Mhm.
many couples, sometimes those first steps just feel so challenging. But like I said, brokenness, pain affords you some risk, some
mhm,
opportunity. And that's definitely what happened to us when we had always dreamed about living in Charleston. But that season when we had nothing else going for us, didn't know if we were going to make it in our marriage or family, it gave us the push, that we needed
yeah,
to start dreaming together again and to move. But we like most couples, our story is we didn't get to a broken place overnight. In fact, when we first got married, we really thought like if anyone's going to rock marriage, it's going to be us,
That's what I thought about
and
myself. It was not true.
it's very true. I mean,
which
truly
may well be a good warning for anybody if you're thinking like we're about to crush this.
crush
It's like,
this. No
Yes.
one's going to be as good married as we were. We are.
Yes.
And
Yes. Oh my gosh, preach.
it's the truth, and that's the thing, I think, even when we were talking about before the show started, premarital counseling and how it's hard to, like, tell anyone in that anything in that season. I think the
Mhm.
problem is we don't really prepare for pain, so we don't know how to get together, how to go through those seasons when you need supernatural forgiveness, supernatural,
yeah.
trust in God, and that's really where we found ourselves.
It
So
is interesting too, though, just because even if the language was different, every couple stood at an altar or in front of a judge at some point, and you say some version of for better or worse, and you really
mhm,
mean it, right? But worse can look different for every couple, and it's hard
so true.
to anticipate that feeling or the muscle you're going to need to get through that season, whatever it
Yeah.
looks like till you get there. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so true. So for us, we were, like I said, we thought we were going to be missionaries, live overseas. Josh took a job at a church, and Josh would have thought we were really just adulting over those next 5 to 7
Mhm.
years. We
Mhm.
we definitely started, living fast and furious. We both got our masters. We were started to have children. Josh was flipping some rental properties. And we had kind of that drift that happens when you just don't have the margin to prioritize each other. But he would have thought, like, we're still having date nights, we're doing okay. But we ended up becoming friends with a couple that moved into our city. And over about a course of a year, looking back now, I know that I began having an emotional affair. And, I don't know that we really talk about emotional affairs a lot this day in culture, but it was just me dreaming about him, dressing for him, liking his attention, those kind of things. And those thought patterns are trying to lead you somewhere. And I
Mhm.
kept all of those things hidden from Josh. I was
Yeah.
really good at like saving face and not letting him know that I was struggling, that I had desires outside of him, that I was disappointed with the way our life was going. If I did confess those things to him, I made them all about him,
Yeah.
Yes.
totally blamed him for all of that. Like
Which you never confess those things to me, but I do think, to your point
Mhm.
about emotional affairs, it's one of the just kind of like slippery slopes that you think
Mhm.
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
could be harmless or innocent, or maybe it's just an uncontrolled thought life that
Mhm.
almost would feel just like a punch in the throat to your spouse. Like, I would never tell them something
Oh,
like that.
yeah. Yeah.
But it keeps me like, had she come to me with these thoughts she was having, it's like, man,
Mhm.
your covenant is so much stronger than you think it is. You
That's
bring
right.
some of that stuff to your spouse and watch them put up boundaries, pray for, fight for,
Mhm.
protect. But
Mm.
Yeah, but instead we moved across the street from them, and continued
Mm.
to just let those boundary lines be blurry
Mhm.
and
yeah,
continued on in friendship. And so on May 29th, we had our third son. And this is also just for any couple listening, our story is so unique to us. The principles in this book are principles that can apply to any couple in any season, that you're in, that you're wanting to go to a new place. But basically, for what we found over the past 15 years sitting and meeting with couples, counseling them, is that life happens to every single couple. And
Yes.
our life verse was always John 10:10, like, the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I've come that you would have life and have it more abundantly.
Mhm.
And the truth is, the enemy just waits. He's very patient. No one wakes up and thinks, I'm going to have an affair tomorrow, or I'm going to be addicted to this tomorrow, or I'm going to hide this secret sin, from my spouse. But he just waits. And that was definitely true in our story. I'd had this third son. He's in the NICU. That was causing division between us because, one, you've just had a baby, you're hormonal, all of those things. But also, I'd had him early, and I think Josh had a little bit of resentment towards that because I was so ready to have him, and then he was so sick, and so it was during that stretch of time when he was in the NICU that the man and I actually like confessed to each other that we had feelings for each
Mhm.
other, that we were feeling feelings of love towards one another. And from that point on, the entire summer was really just spent in hell, I say, looking back, of
Yeah.
just trying to dream about being outside of my family. Like, and
Mhm.
and as I continued to do that and take more and more steps towards that, more and more walls began to build between
Sure.
Josh and I.
Sure.
This covenant does take cultivation. It takes emotional intimacy. It takes honesty, trust, all of those things, that we know
Mhm.
in marriage, but the drift can happen so quickly. And
Yeah.
by the time we got to August 8th was the night that I confessed, barely, a little bit, to Josh on the couch, like, what if it's me that's ruining this other couple's marriage? But by the time we had gotten there, the walls were so strong on my side of just, he
Sure.
doesn't love me, he doesn't care for me, he's not the one for me, we
Mhm.
chose wrong, all the lies
All
that
the
culture
lies,
gives
yeah.
couples.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, honestly, our story is a Jesus love story because he fought for us so
mhm.
much. We once I confessed to Josh and he went to the church, they asked him not to come back, and we ended up really in no man's land for the next 6 to 7 months. We couldn't find wise counsel. We went to lots of different counselors, and like I said, our trust had been broken, our emotional
Yeah.
intimacy was broken. So we understand, and I think that's what's given us the empathy to sit with so many couples, is that there's nothing that scares us. When they're
Yes.
like, I don't even think I love him anymore. I have no feelings for him anymore,
Mhm.
because we've watched God bring things
Mhm.
really from death to life. But
Yeah.
in that season, Josh also had this vision and passion that would say to me, like, I'm not trying to get back to an old place. I'm asking you to go to a deeper place, a new place of love with me.
That's
And it was
good.
really that word that helped, sustain us along with
Yeah.
so many words from Jesus all along the way and fighting for us.
Mhm. Yeah.
You look back on that story and that year was so messy and so challenging. It was not like a clean break for me. It wasn't like, okay, I'm so sorry. Me saying, let's do anything to rebuild.
Mm.
Like I said, I really was not there emotionally
Sure.
because I had
Yeah.
let my mind go for so long.
Yeah.
So we moved to Charleston and that really started to shift things for us because we did get in a healthy church, but also we started to be mentored by a couple. They were basically just doing a small group, but the other people in the small group dropped out and it was just and
Hmm.
like I said, I don't know if any other couples found themselves there, but we were so broken that, like I said, there was no pretenses. There was no hiding. We
Yeah.
could just tell them the real and raw things.
Yeah.
And for us, we were at such a like fragile place at home that if there was any conflict, I couldn't address it because she felt like I was attacking her or
Mhm.
it wouldn't get resolved and it would just be hard conversation. So I was just like, you know what? Monday or Saturday to Thursday, I'm just going to focus on being peacemaker, servant, friend. I'm going to try to create a peaceful landing when she gets home. We can
Mhm.
go on walks. And there was crap that happened, all throughout the week
Sure.
that I would keep a note like, all right, I'm gonna talk about this at small group, talk about this at small group. Yeah.
So it really changed us that, over the course of that, because Josh says, looking back, he realized like he didn't have to be the guy. He didn't have to know all the answers about
Yeah.
marriage. And I do think that's a lie that a lot of men especially believe. Like, I should know how to do this,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think for me, I learned that I didn't have to be perfect. I didn't have to hide, what I was struggling with, that I could be the real me. And that started calling it confession therapy. But as I actually started to tell him more and more things that he didn't find out, that he didn't know about, it
Mhm.
came from me wanting to not hide. We started to see our intimacy grow.
Yeah.
And we still practice that to this day. Most couples would say that they want to be open and honest with each other, but it is so challenging to say, "Hey,
Mhm.
I had this dream about this man the other night," or,
Mhm.
"I'm longing for this," or,
Mhm.
"Hey, I really am wanting more passion here," or it's
Yeah.
really hard to say those things
Yeah.
oftentimes to each other,
Yeah. Oh,
but it's what
absolutely.
grows you so deeply.
It does. It really does. And you're spot on. And that's what Tim and I have realized. And I've mentioned this before on the podcast. I won't go into a lot of detail, but we met and married in 7 months and we were ready. We were both out of college. We were at that, place in our lives. But marriage was the catalyst for us. Like me realizing how bad I was at marriage and not really not thinking I would be, and the past,
Yes.
the wounds that needed healing that I didn't realize were gonna cause issues, none of that would have shown up without marriage, so it has nothing to do with how quickly we got married, it has to do with that was the way the Lord was gonna
That's right.
show, it was the only way it would come to the surface. I couldn't hide. There was nowhere to go. He was there. He saw all the mess, but what
Yeah.
saved our marriage was before we got married, we said, "We're entering into a covenant." And divorce doesn't exist. We don't talk about it. We don't joke about it. Like this is a covenant relationship. We are stuck. So
Yes.
once we got going and I promise you, like our first fuss was the plane ride home from the honeymoon. I mean, the first like few months were really tough. The first few years were rocky, and then we hit honeymoon about year 7. And this spring will be 18, and we're in the best place we've ever been. But
Yeah.
seriously, right? It's those things, but setting up those boundaries for us was exactly what you were saying. I realized that I was safe to dish it out because we'd set up
Yeah.
those boundaries. I didn't have to always wonder if I bring this up, is he going to leave me? Now, emotionally, he kind of checked out. We were kind of a mess for a while, but we were able both to bring that stuff. And we do find, the more we dig and the more we bring into the light what you were saying, when you confess that stuff and you bring it into the light, then it's exposed to the light of God. He can use it, He can fix it, He can
Mhm.
deal with it. But when we keep it and we harbor it, it's like festers, right? And it's this thing that can stand between us when we don't even know it's there. So
Mm.
there's so much beauty in bringing those things out and just putting them on the table. We're just going to sift through this.
Yeah.
And same
Yeah.
thing, like you said, with dreams. Like Tim and I have even had that situation where one of us will wake up and like, we had this dream and I can't help the dream. He can't help the dream, but it's there. So like we'll talk about it. Like, listen, I'm sorry, I don't know why, but this is what I dreamed last night. So this is what is messing with my head today, And it's such
Mhm.
Yes.
beauty in trusting each other with that vulnerability and working
Yeah.
together. Oh, that's
It's
so good.
it's so good. I love even the title of this podcast, The Intertwined Life, because that's what you're saying is that like it's an impossible situation, marriage, in a lot of ways. You're bringing two people who are not raised together, who have very
Yes.
different backgrounds, traumas, triggers,
Mhm.
desires, and you're making them
Yeah.
as one flesh. That's what God designed.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
just the commitment to stay, that's the book is broken down into stay, these principles around
Oh,
staying. But this endurance factor, just saying we've taken quitting off the table. We're going to
yes.
end together. One of our favorite artists, Johnny Swim, they have this song called Body Bags and Tags or something. It's like this thing ends in body bags and with
Wow.
tags on each other. And
That's
so, but
awesome.
that kind of vision lets you know
Yeah.
like there's going to be pain and there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes up between us, but we can get
Mhm.
through it
Yeah.
together if we're
Mhm.
honest.
Yeah.
As long as it's dying of natural causes and not you
That's
killing
right.
me.
Yeah. Good
Right.
point.
That's
Good point. Like,
right.
we don't want to end up on Dateline, right?
Yeah, I heard this mentor one time say, "No, I never considered divorce. I definitely considered murder,
Yeah.
but not
I've
divorce."
heard that before too.
I was like, "Yeah, I understand
I've
that."
heard that before too.
So
It's
true.
like that's the only way out. I don't know.
Yeah,
Oh
it's so true.
God.
And I think in generations past, they probably stayed through, traumatic or abusive situations. And still people do that today. I'm not saying we don't. And that this book is
Yes.
not about that, but
Yes.
there is this fracture in our culture around endurance. We don't
Mhm.
stay really anywhere in the same city, in the same job. We have been afforded the privilege to not
Mhm.
have to endure. And
Yes.
so I think it is just a voice of hope to people to say you're going to hit some really rough patches, but if you will commit to kind of working through them and growing through them,
Mhm.
you don't have to stay in those same places.
Yeah.
And I think when we were in our darkest season, I thought, well, if I just do the right thing, the godly thing, and just stay the course, I'll end up with a friend, but I will have done right by God. But the
Mm.
truth is, that is not our story. God authors all those emotions. Like you're saying, you're 18, we're in the best place ever. Like,
Yeah.
he is the one that brings dead things to life. And if there is somebody listening right now that is in a dark spot in their marriage, that would be the biggest voice of hope that I would tell them is that you're not going to feel this way forever. If you'll
Yeah.
commit to taking a step towards God,
Yeah.
towards each other, if you'll seek inspiration from others, you will go to a different place, and you will look back on it and think, I'm so glad that I endured through
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, it's so true. And I'm glad you brought that up because we're not speaking here to someone who is in a dangerous, life-threatening situation or,
Totally.
an extremely abusive situation. Like those are some outlying factors that need to be addressed separately, 100%. But yes, when we're talking about when you're uncomfortable, you're unhappy, right? And that's what you're saying. We don't endure anymore. The minute something doesn't feel good, then we just drop that one, change it, get a new one. Like, oh, these jeans don't fit anymore. I'll get a new one. I mean, it's just kind of
Right.
it's very like we treat it in that way, in that sense. Anything, whether it's a job or whether it's where you live or whether it's who you're married to, it's just so easy to be flippant about those things these days. And that's
That's
not
right.
what it was made for. And I had the privilege of interviewing Gary Thomas quite a while ago. He's
Yes.
the one that wrote Sacred Marriage. Great, great man. And I was telling him, gosh, 15 years ago, I guess, 12, something like that. Anyway, he did a conference at the church we went to in Northern Virginia in the DC area before we moved to Florida. And I heard him say, he said, what if marriage is more to make you holy than to make you happy? And I never like that never let go of me
Yeah.
because like, wow, there is a pruning. Marriage not only
Right.
is just for right now to like be happy and have a buddy, but everything is to make us more and more like Christ. And that comes with pruning, that comes with sacrifice, that comes with learning, that comes with seeing our own issues and struggling and wrestling together and the picture of that. So when you've got two people that have that commitment to marriage as a covenant, we entered into this with the right mindset, yet here we are in what
That's
we
right.
didn't see this coming, and it sucks, you know.
It's so
But
true.
there's hope. There's hope for the sucky marriages.
It is so true. And if
Yeah.
you leave during those worst times, during those challenging
Yes.
circumstances, you do shortcut your healing because you take
Mm,
you with you. but if you stay
Yeah.
through that pain, in those days, there was so much about Josh. He is such a man of faithfulness and loyalty and steadfastness that I needed to grow from. I needed to learn those muscles. And there were things that he needed to learn from me, that this relationship, that women, it's a garden, that it takes a
Mhm.
lot of cultivation
Mhm.
and it's
Mhm.
complicated. And you can't put all your priorities in work or the job or whatever and neglect the soul of the woman. It takes a lot of devotion, and we grew in those areas. But then one of the sweet things that happened for me is about 5 years later, we had this picture that was painted kind of after we came out of that season, of my friend Kelly Bowman. She's an artist, and um, she had painted this picture for us, and I was staring at this picture, and I just realized, like, gosh, Josh is the giant in this picture. I always thought I was the giant. I don't know if it was ever felt that way, but when you get married,
Mhm.
I'm like, I always thought I was really great, but he's actually really great. Well, then about 2 years later, I'm looking at the same picture, and I felt like the Lord said to me, I am the giant in this picture.
Mhm.
I am.
Mhm.
It's me.
Yeah.
It is me. I'm the one that has been changing you, fighting for you, doing this intertwined life, making you one.
Yeah.
It has
Mhm.
taken so much of the pursuit of Jesus, the love that actually comes down, that whole I have come that they would have life. It's not striving. It's not because we've now been the most behavioral experts in marriage. It's because he has really fought for us, because he
Mm.
also hates divorce, and he says that. And that's what he says in Matthew 5 when the Pharisees are trying to tell him, like, but what about this instance? And what about this instance? And he's like, listen, two have become one. They were joined together, and he says, yes, we've made allowances. You've made allowances for hard hearts and sin and betrayal. But this is an intertwined commitment that God has done, in
Yeah.
people's marriage. So it is about
Yeah.
holiness, which
Yeah.
is hard to feel on that Tuesday, you
Sure.
know?
Oh gosh, yeah. But you know what I love? Two things have jumped out to me. So one, John 10:10. I love that verse, of course. Most of us see it as this great promise, which it is. But I think we forget the first part is a warning, right? It's like
Absolutely.
he's out there, like it talks about in Peter. He's a
Yes.
roaring lion seeking whom to devour. Bleh, I messed all that up. I'm too excited. But we
Yes.
forget the first part. Jesus saying, "Hey, he's coming after you." And what more would
Yeah.
he want to
So
attack
true.
than two people who both are in union, love the Lord, and want to have a marriage that honors him? What more would he want to go after? He doesn't want
That's
power
right.
couples out there running around for the kingdom, right? And so,
Yep.
hey, this, but I came to give you this. So it's a warning with a promise, not just a promise of, there's going to be hard times. Like he told us in John 16:33, you will have trouble, but take heart. Those two are such mirror verses. But the other thing I think about when you talk like this is it's so easy in the midst of all of that to one be like, I don't feel like it. Like, yeah, this sounds all great, but I'm checked out. I'm drained.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted. I'm done. And I'm hurt. But the other
Yeah.
side of it is how in the world is God going to get my spouse on board? Okay, guys, that was part one. A little cliffhanger there for you. I know you're really intrigued. Be sure you come back in 2 weeks for part two of this great interview where we talk about what do you do if you're the only one fighting for your marriage? Is it worth it? What steps do you take? Can you take any steps? Don't miss out. It's going to be really great. You're going to love the conclusion of this episode. And if you want a chance to get your hands on a free copy of Josh and Katie's book or any other book I ever recommend, whether on my reading list or an author that I have interviewed here on the show, all you got to do each month, I'm going to select a winner. So rate or review the podcast or share it and send me some kind of proof. Screenshot your review, screenshot you texting a friend, screenshot you sharing it on social media. Anything you do to help us share the show, send me proof of that at jenny@jennyzents.com. And the first of each month, one winner will be chosen to get a free copy of any book I've ever shared, recommended on this podcast, or from my reading list on my website. I'd love to be able to put a copy of this book in your hands. All right. Have a wonderful, wonderful couple weeks, and I will see you back here soon. Hey, friend, if you enjoyed this episode and you got some good stuff out of it, there's a few options you have. One, you could click that little subscribe button. And also, if you would review this podcast, Oh my gosh. If you like what you heard, get on there, give it a 5-star review. If you didn't like what you heard, just pretend it never happened, okay? But if you would do a review for me, just take a couple seconds and do that. Not only would I be crazy excited, but also it would just be a great way for us to partner together, for you to help this podcast be seen by more women out there. And you could be a part of helping more women discover these practical ways to apply God's word to just everyday stuff. So I would love it, love it, love it if you could help me out in one of those two ways.